Sexual Harassment Prevention Training, Combating Sexual Harassment. Sexual harassment in the workplace. Sexual harassment will not be tolerated. Today's training will help you better understand what is considered sexual harassment, show you how to report sexual harassment, and show you external reporting options. What is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination and is unlawful. It includes harassment on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, self-identified or perceived sex, gender expression, gender identity, and the status of being transgender. It includes unwelcome conduct either of a sexual nature or which is directed at an individual because of that individual's sex when such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of employment, or submission to or rejection of such conduct is used as the basis for employment decisions. Hostile environment. Sexual or discriminatory displays or publications anywhere in the workplace. Hostile actions against an individual because of that individual's sex. Quid pro quo sexual harassment occurs when a person in authority trades or tries to trade job benefits for sexual favors. Occurs between an employee and someone with authority who has the ability to grant or withhold job benefits. Who can be the target? Sexual harassment can occur between any individuals regardless of their sex or gender. The law protects employees, paid or unpaid interns, and non-employees who work in the workplace. Who can be the perpetrator? Anyone in the workplace, a coworker, a supervisor or manager, any third party, non-employee, intern, vendor, customer, etc. Where can workplace sexual harassment occur? Whenever and wherever employees are fulfilling their work responsibilities, including employer-sponsored events, conferences, office parties, off-site, or during non-work hours. Sex stereotyping. Harassing a person because that person does not conform to gender stereotypes is sexual harassment. Harassment because someone is performing a job that is usually or was previously performed mostly by a person of a different sex is sex discrimination. Retaliation. Protected activities. Any employee engaged in protected activity is protected by law from being retaliated against. Protected activities include making a complaint about harassment or suspected harassment, providing information during an investigation, testifying in connection with the complaint. What is retaliation? Any action to alter an employee's terms and conditions of employment because that individual engaged in protected activities. For example, sudden change in the work schedule or work location, or demotion. What is not retaliation? A negative employment action is not retaliatory merely because it occurs after the employee engages in protected activity. Supervisors' responsibilities. Supervisors and managers are held to a high standard of behavior. They are required to report any harassment reported to them or which they observe. They are responsible for any harassment or discrimination they should have known about, and they are responsible and expected to model appropriate behavior. Mandatory reporting. Supervisors must report any harassment they observe or know of, even if no one is objecting to it. Harassment must be promptly reported to the employer. Supervisors and managers will be subject to discipline for failing to report suspected sexual harassment. Supervisors and managers will also be subject to discipline for engaging in retaliation. What should I do if I am harassed? We will provide you with a complaint form to report harassment and file complaints. It gets submitted to Natasha Thomas, who's the Director of Human Resources. That's Natasha's email. Her phone number is 212-273-5625. The fax number is 917-243-6505, and she's at 5 Bryant Park, 1065 Avenue of the Americas, 5th floor, New York, New York, 10018. You may also make report verbally. What should I do if I witness sexual harassment? Anyone who witnesses or becomes aware of potential instances of sexual harassment should report it to a supervisor, manager, or designee. It is unlawful for an employer to retaliate against you for reporting suspected sexual harassment or assisting in any investigation. Investigation and corrective action. Anyone who engages in sexual harassment or retaliation will be subject to remedial and/or disciplinary action. An investigation of any complaint should be commenced immediately and completed as soon as possible. The investigation will also be confidential to the extent possible. Any employee may be required to cooperate as needed in an investigation. The investigation process. The Director of Human Resources, Natasha Thomas, will conduct an immediate review of the allegations and take any interim actions. Relevant documents, emails, or phone records will be requested, preserved, and obtained. Interviews will be conducted. The individual who complained and the individual or individuals accused of sexual harassment are notified of final determination and that appropriate administrative action has been taken. Additional protections and remedies. The New York State Division of Human Rights, or DHR, complaint alleging violation of the human rights law may be filed either with DHR or in New York State Supreme Court. Complaints may be filed with DHR anytime within 1 year of the alleged sexual harassment. You do not need to have an attorney to file, and for more information you can go to www.dhr.ny.gov. United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC. An individual can file a complaint with the EEOC anytime within 300 days from the alleged discrimination. You do not need to have an attorney to file. A complaint must be filed with the EEOC before you can file in federal court. For more information, go to www.eeoc.gov. Local protections. Many localities enforce laws protecting individuals from sexual harassment and discrimination. Contact your county, city, or town to find out if laws exist. Harassment may constitute a crime if it involves things like physical touching, coerced physical confinement, or coerced sex acts. Contact the local police department. Sexual harassment case studies. Let's take a look at a few scenarios that help explain the kind of behaviors that can constitute sexual harassment. These examples describe inappropriate behavior in the workplace that will be dealt with by corrective action, including disciplinary action. Remember, it's up to all employees to report inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Example 1, not taking no for an answer. Lee Ann's coworker Ralph has just been through a divorce. He drops comments on a few occasions that he is lonely and needs to find a new girlfriend. Lee Ann and Ralph have been friendly in the past and have had lunch together in local restaurants on many occasions. Ralph asks Lee Ann to go on a date with him, dinner and a movie. Lee Ann likes Ralph and agrees to go out with him. She enjoys her date with Ralph, but decides that a relationship is not a good idea. She thanks Ralph for a nice time, but explains that she does not want to have a relationship with him. Ralph waits 2 weeks and then starts pressuring Lee Ann for more dates. She refuses, but Ralph does not stop. He keeps asking her to go out with him. Question 1. When Ralph first asked Lee Ann for a date, this was sexual harassment. True or false? False. Ralph's initial comments about looking for a girlfriend and asking Lee Ann, a co-worker, for a date are not sexual harassment. Even if Lee Ann had turned down Ralph for the first date, Ralph had done nothing wrong by asking for a date and by making occasional comments that are not sexually explicit about his personal life. Question 2. Lee Ann cannot complain of sexual harassment because she went on a date with Ralph. True or false? False. Being friendly, going on a date, or even having a prior relationship with a coworker does not mean that a coworker has a right to behave as Ralph did towards Leanne. She has to continue working with Ralph, and he must respect her wishes and not engage in behavior that has now become inappropriate for the workplace. Leanne complains to her supervisor, and the supervisor, as required, reports her complaint to the person designated by her employer to receive complaints. Ralph is questioned about his behavior, and he apologizes. He is instructed by the designated person to stop. Ralph stops for a while, but then starts leaving little gifts for Leanne on her desk, with accompanying love notes. The love notes are not overtly offensive, but Ralph's behavior is starting to make Leanne nervous, as she is afraid he may start stalking her. Question 3. Ralph's subsequent behavior with gifts and love notes is not sexual harassment because he has stopped asking Leanne for dates as instructed. He's just being nice to Leanne because he likes her. True or false? False. Leanne should report Ralph's behavior. She was entitled to have effective assistance in getting Ralph to stop his inappropriate workplace behavior. Because Ralph has returned to pestering Leanne after being told to stop, he could be subject to serious disciplinary actions for his behavior. Example 2, the boss with a bad attitude. Sharon transfers to a new location with her employer. Her new supervisor, Paul, is friendly and helps her get familiar with her new job duties. After a few days, when no one else is around, Paul comes over to Sharon's work area to chat. Paul talks about what he did last night, which was go to a strip club. Sharon is shocked that Paul would bring up such a topic in the workplace and says nothing in response. Paul continues talking and says that all the women in the office are so unattractive, he needs to get out and see some hot chicks once in a while. He tells Sharon he's glad she joined the staff because, unlike the others, she is easy on the eyes. Sharon feels very offended and demeaned that she and the other women in her workplace are being evaluated on their looks by their supervisor. Question 1. Because Paul did not tell Sharon that she is unattractive, he has not harassed her. True or false? False. Paul has made sexually explicit statements to Sharon, which are derogatory and demeaning to Sharon and her female co-workers. It does not matter that Paul supposedly paid Sharon a compliment. The discussion is still highly offensive to Sharon, as it would be to most reasonable persons in her situation. Question 2. By bringing up his visit to the strip club, Paul is engaging in inappropriate workplace behavior. True or false? True. Simply bringing up the visit to the strip club is inappropriate in the workplace, especially by a supervisor, and it would be appropriate for Sharon to report this conduct. A one-time comment about going to a strip club is behavior that Paul would be told to stop, even though it probably would not rise to the level of unlawful harassment, unless it was repeated on multiple occasions. Question 3. Paul should be instructed to stop making these types of comments, but this is not a serious matter. True or false? False. Paul's comments about the female employees are a serious matter and show his contempt for women in the workplace. Paul is required to model appropriate behavior and must not exhibit contempt for employees on the basis of sex or any protected characteristic. Sharon should not have to continue to work for someone she knows harbors such contempt for women, nor should the other employees have to work for such a supervisor. Management should be aware of this, even if the other employees are not, and Paul should be disciplined and most likely removed from his current position. Example 3. Oops. Carla is a home health aide and works with a female client, Jackie. Jackie requires assistance with activities of daily living, including bathing. Carla has noticed that every time she's assisting Jackie with her bath, Jackie accidentally touches or grabs her breasts and says, "Oops," with a smile. At first, Carla thought nothing of it and that it was innocent, because Jackie's condition sometimes caused her to have spasm, which causes jerking movements. However, Carla noticed that these accidental touches or grabs were happening more frequently and were not accompanied by a spasm. She also noticed that Jackie began talking about her sex life more openly and began asking her intimate and personal questions. This makes Carla uncomfortable. Question 1. Should Carla ignore the feelings of discomfort that she is working with Jackie and continue working on the case because this is part of her job? True or false? False. The accidental touches, grabs, and conversations have created an environment that is uncomfortable for Carla. Although Jackie sees nothing wrong with her actions, Carla is bothered by them. There is no reason for her to be uncomfortable in the workplace. She should report this behavior to her supervisor, as any sexual touching is very serious. Carla calls her coordinator, Kimberly, and asks to be removed from the case. Kimberly inquires why Carla wants to be removed from the case. Question 2. Carla does not have to tell Kimberly why she wants to be removed from the case because it's none of her business and it's not her concern what happens to the next HHA that is sent to the client. True or false? False. Carla needs to report what is happening in the home to her coordinator. Even if Jackie thinks nothing of it, given the repetitive touching, it is unlikely that this was accidental and the behavior may be transferred to the next home health aide that is sent into the home. Jackie needs to be made aware that the behavior is unacceptable and if it continues could affect the home care service that she receives. Carla explains what has been going on and states that she's no longer comfortable working on Jackie's case. Kimberly tells Carla she's making a big deal about nothing but still removes her from the case. Kimberly should report the incident to her supervisor and human resources. True or false? True. It is Kimberly's responsibility as the aide supervisor to either communicate this report to her supervisor and/or human resources for investigation. This may be a pattern with Jackie and could impact replacement aides, the contract, the agency, and the service the client receives. Carla was removed from the case but has not worked for 3 weeks. Every time she calls Kimberly to inquire about work, she's told there are no cases available. John, who sits next to Kimberly, hears her tell Carla that she has no work available and asks, "Don't you have 2 open cases?" Kimberly's response is that the aide complains about every little thing and probably will ask to be removed if offered the case anyway. Question 4. John should report the conversation to his supervisor because Kimberly seems to be keeping Carla out of work because she complained about her previous client. True or false? True. Kimberly's action seems to be retaliatory because Carla asked to be removed from a case where she felt uncomfortable. As Carla's supervisor, Kimberly should have recognized the client's actions and immediately reported the situation to her supervisor and/or human resources. Example 4. Too close for comfort. Keisha noticed that her new boss, Harold, leans extremely close to her when they are going over the reports that she prepares. He touches her hand or shoulder frequently as they discuss work. Keisha tries to move away from him in these situations, but he doesn't seem to get the message. Question 1. Keisha should just ignore Harold's behavior as not sufficiently severe or pervasive. True or false? False. If Keisha is uncomfortable with Harold's behavior, she has options. If she feels comfortable doing so, she should tell Harold to please back off because his closeness and touching make her uncomfortable. Another option is to complain directly to a person designated by her employer to receive complaints, who will speak with Harold. Although this may not be sufficiently severe or pervasive to create an unlawful harassment situation, unless it was repeated by Harold after he was told to stop, there is no reason for Keisha to be uncomfortable in the workplace. There is no valid reason for Harold to engage in this behavior. Before Keisha gets around to complaining, Harold brushes up against her back in the conference room before a meeting. She's now getting really annoyed but still puts off doing anything about it. Later, Harold traps her in his office after they finish discussing work by standing between her and the door of his small office. Keisha doesn't know what to do, so she moves past him to get out. As she does so, Harold runs his hand over her breast. Question 2. Harold's brushing up against Keisha in the conference room could just be inadvertent and does not give Keisha any additional grounds to complain about Harold. True or false? False. Harold is now engaging in a pattern of escalating behavior. Given the pattern of his too close and touching behavior, it is unlikely that this was inadvertent. Even before being trapped in Harold's office, Keisha should have reported all of the behaviors she had experienced that made her uncomfortable. Question 3. Harold touching Keisha's breast is inappropriate, but is probably not unlawful harassment because it only happened once. True or false? False. Any type of sexual touching is very serious and does not need to be repeated to constitute sexual harassment. Keisha should immediately report it without waiting for it to be repeated. Harold can expect to receive formal discipline, including possible firing. Example 5. A distasteful trade. The following scenario will explain many aspects of quid pro quo sexual harassment. Tatiana is hoping for a promotion to a position that she knows will become vacant soon. She knows that her boss David will be involved in deciding who will be promoted. She tells David that she will be applying for the position and that she is very interested in receiving the promotion. David says, "We'll see. There will be a lot of others interested in the position." A week later, Tatiana and David travel together on state business, including an overnight hotel stay. Over dinner, David tells Tatiana that he hopes he will be able to promote her because he has always really enjoyed working with her. He tells her that some other candidates look better on paper, but that she is the one he wants. He tells her that he can pull some strings to get her into the job, and Tatiana thanks David. Later, David suggests that they go to his hotel room for drinks and some relaxation. Tatiana declines his offer. Question 1. David's behavior could be harassment of Tatiana. True or false? True. David's behavior as Tatiana's boss is inappropriate, and Tatiana should feel free to report the behavior if it made her uncomfortable. It is irrelevant that his behavior occurs away from the workplace. Their relationship is that of supervisor and supervisee, and all their interactions will tend to impact the workplace. David's behavior at this point may or may not constitute quid pro quo harassment. David has made no threat that if Tatiana refuses his advance, he will handle her promotion any differently. However, his offer to pull some strings, followed by a request that they go to his hotel room for drinks and relaxation, might be considered potentially coercive. Certainly, if David persists in his advances, even if he never makes or carries out any threat or promise about job benefits, then this could create a hostile environment for Tatiana, for which the employer could be strictly liable because David is a management employee. After they return from the trip, Tatiana asks David if he knows when the job will be posted so that she can apply. He says he's not sure, but there's still time for her to make it worth his while, to pull strings for her. He then asks, how about going out to dinner this Friday and then coming over to my place? Question 2. David engaged in quid pro quo harassment. True or false? True. It is now evident that David has offered to help Tatiana with her promotion in exchange for sexual favors. Tatiana, who really wants the position, decides to go out with David. Almost every Friday they go out at David's insistence and engage in sexual activity. Tatiana does not want to be in a relationship with David and is only going out with him because she believes that he will otherwise block her promotion. Question 3. Tatiana cannot complain of harassment because she voluntarily engaged in sexual activity with David. True or false? False. Because the sexual activity is unwelcome to Tatiana, she is a victim of sexual harassment. Equally, if she had refused David's advances, she would still be a victim of sexual harassment. The offer to Tatiana to trade job benefits for sexual favors by someone with authority over her in the workplace is quid pro quo sexual harassment, and the employer is exposed to liability because of its supervisor's actions. Tatiana receives the promotion. Question 4. Tatiana cannot complain of harassment because she got the job, so there is no discrimination against her. True or false? False. Tatiana can be the recipient of sexual harassment whether or not she receives the benefit that was used as an inducement. Tatiana breaks off the sexual activities with David. He then gives her a bad evaluation, and she is removed from her new position at the end of the probationary period and returns to her old job. Tatiana breaks off the sexual activities with David. He then gives her a bad evaluation, and she is removed from her new position at the end of the probationary period and returns to her old job. Question 5. Is it now too late for Tatiana to complain? Losing a place of favor due to the breakup of the voluntary relationship does not create a claim for sexual harassment. True or false? False. It is true that the breakup of a relationship, if truly consensual and welcomed at the time, usually does not create a claim for sexual harassment. However, the relationship in this case was never welcomed by Tatiana. David's behavior has at all times been inappropriate and a serious violation of the employer's policy. As the person who abused the power and the authority of a management position, David has engaged in sexual harassment. Example 6. An issue about appearances. Leonard works as a clerk typist for a large employer. He likes to wear jewelry, and his attire frequently includes earrings and necklaces. His boss, Margaret, thinks it's weird that as a man, Leonard wears jewelry and wants to be a clerical worker. She frequently makes sarcastic comments to him about his appearance and refers to him jokingly as her office boy. Leonard, who hopes to develop his career in the area of customer relations, applies for an open promotional position that would involve working in a front desk area, where he would interact with the public. Margaret tells Leonard that if he wants that job, he had better look more normal or else wait for a promotion to mailroom supervisor. Question 1. Leonard's boss is correct to tell him wearing jewelry is inappropriate for customer service positions. True or false? False. Leonard's jewelry is only an issue because Margaret considers it unusual for a man to wear such jewelry. Therefore, her comments to Leonard constitute sex stereotyping. Margaret also is suspicious that Leonard is gay, which she says she doesn't mind, but she thinks Leonard is secretive. She starts asking him questions about his private life, such as, are you married? Do you have a partner? Do you have kids? Leonard tries to respond politely no to all her questions, but it is becoming annoyed. Margaret starts gossiping with Leonard's co-workers about his supposed sexual orientation. Question 2. Leonard is the recipient of harassment on the basis of sex and sexual orientation. True or false? True. Leonard is harassed on the basis of sex because he is being harassed for failure to adhere to Margaret's sex stereotypes. Leonard is also harassed on the basis of his perceived sexual orientation. It doesn't matter whether or not Leonard is a gay man in order for him to have a claim for sexual orientation harassment. Leonard might also be considered a victim of harassment on the basis of gender identity, which is a form of sex and/or disability discrimination prohibited by the human rights law. Leonard should report Margaret's conduct, which is clearly a violation of the sexual harassment policy, to a person designated by his employer to receive complaints, i.e. his employer's designee. Leonard decides that he is not going to get a fair chance at the promotion under these circumstances, and he complains to the employer's designee about Margaret's behavior. The designee does an investigation and tells Margaret that Leonard's jewelry is not in violation of any workplace rule, that she is to consider him for the position without regard for his gender, and that she must stop making harassing comments, asking Leonard intrusive questions, and gossiping about his personal life. Margaret stops her comments, questions, and gossiping, but she then recommends a woman be promoted to the open position. The woman promoted has much less experience than Leonard and lacks his 2-year degree in customer relations from a community college. Question 3. Leonard has likely been the victim of discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, and/or retaliation. True or false? True. We don't know Margaret's reason for not recommending Leonard for the promotion, but it is not looking good for Margaret. It appears that she is either biased against Leonard for the same reason she harassed him, or she's retaliating because he complained, or both. Leonard should speak further with the employer's designee, and the circumstances of the promotion should be investigated. If it is found that Margaret has abused her supervisory authority by failing to fairly consider Leonard for the promotion, she should be subject to disciplinary action. This scenario shows that sometimes more severe action is needed in response to harassment complaints in order to prevent discrimination in the future. Summary. Other types of workplace harassment. Any harassment or discrimination based on a protected characteristic is prohibited in the workplace and may lead to disciplinary action against the perpetrator. Age, race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, military status, sex, disability, marital status, domestic violence, victim status, gender identity, and criminal history. Much of the information presented in this training applies to all types of workplace harassment. Summary. How to recognize harassment as inappropriate behavior. Harassment because of any protected characteristic is prohibited. Why workplace harassment is employment discrimination. All harassment should be reported. Supervisors and managers have a special responsibility to report harassment. Important resources. For additional information, www.ny.gov/program/combating sexual harassment workplace.